Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Thorn, and today I continue my Guild Wars 2 lore recap series, getting us ready for End of Dragons. So in part 1, I covered the origins of our character, the Orders of Tyria, as well as the rise of the Pact and the fall of Zaitan. Part 2 looked at the early lives of the Sylvari characters Kaith, Fowland, Wynn, Kanak and Ciara, aka Scarlet Briar. Here in part 3 we will dive into Scarlet's War. Part 1 of Scarlet's War, it's a long war, and the origins of Dragon's Watch, as the two are inextricably linked. Needless to say, spoilers ahead. So let's tarry not and dive into the aftermath of Scarlet's awakening. Stepping out of Omad's machine, Scarlet became the first dragon champion of the age, and as Mordremoth's instrument, she would bring ruin upon the world to hasten his emergence. Using the connection and knowledge gained before their joining when she was Ciara, Scarlet raised 3 armies, and eventually would go on to redirect the magical currents of Tyria itself. Scarlet allied the Dredge and the Flame Legion to create the Molten Alliance. The Dredge wanted to enhance their already impressive sonic weaponry with the fire magic of the Flame Legion, and the Flame, well, they wanted those self-same weapons and planned to enslave the Dredge once their alliance of convenience ended. The sole Flame Legion leader who opposed this coalition was Ephraim Greet's Glory. 9 years later, Ephraim would go on to play a major role in the reintegration of the Flame Legion back into Char society. Scarlet facilitated this uneasy collaboration primarily to gain access to the Dredge's sonic weaponry, needing it to map the leyline network of Tyria discovered by her alter ego Ciara during her time at Ratasum. The Toxic Alliance was by far the most enigmatic forged, as it was union of Krayt and a splinter faction of the Nightmare Court. Now we know Scarlet promised the Krayt an audience with one of their prophets to secure their allegiance. You see, the Krayt believed their ancestors transcended the mortal plane, leaving behind obelisks to mark their passing. These ancestors are referred to as prophets, and in the aftermath of their divine return, all other sapient races would and will be annihilated, or so the Krayt believe. What the Nightmare Court got out of the arrangement is unknown, but together these two built the Tower of Nightmare in Keswick Hills for Scarlet Briar, and this tower, a twisted mockery of the Pale Tree, would likely have been used to corrupt the Free Sylvari and or raise an army for Mordremoth. I suspect the mere fact that the Tower of Nightmare was built in direct opposition to the Pale Tree was enough to secure the court's allegiance, but that is never specifically stated. For a deeper dive into Sylvari lore, links to that lore series here. The final faction of Scarlet's allies were the Aether Blades, which consisted of Inquest Asura and pirates primarily from the Blood-Tide coast. The pirates were promised spoils and airships. The Inquest, I imagine, had access to all the technologies and magics of their allies, but again, this is never explicitly stated, although it would make a great deal of sense. Pact ships were stolen and retrofitted with Scarlet's portal technology, granting them air superiority with their ability to strike and then vanish before any real resistance could be brought to bear against them. Of note for End of Dragons is the character Maid Trin, the leader of the Aether Blades who reported directly to Scarlet. Captain Trin is of Canthan descent, and it is rumoured she is the estranged sister of Marjory Delaqua, whose origin is expanded in this video, but more on Maid Trin and Marjory later. In the year 1326, Scarlet Briar let slip the dogs of war. The death and suffering unleashed then still scars the face of Tyria today. The Molten Alliance laid waste to villages and outposts in the Shiver Peaks to the Charlands of Ascalon. Those who survived these assaults fled to the protection of the cities. Holbrek and the Black Citadel were inundated with refugees. Amongst their number was a young Norn named Braham Eirsson. He was the son of Erstagolkin and Borg the Sun Catcher. His father had raised him alone until his death. Bram was only 7 at the time and would have normally been sent to his mother. However, his father's dying wish was for Eir to be kept in the dark about his passing. He did not want their son to stand in the way of Eir's legend. So Bram stayed in Kragstad, cared for by Ingvar Rugnar and Brumhilda. This forced separation hardened Bram's heart to his mother, and he was only 16 when the Molten Alliance burned everything he had known and loved. Bram, however, was not seeking refuge in the great cities. He sought allies, but he was refused by both his mother Eir and her guildmate Ritlock Brimstone. You see, air could not help, as the whole brick was buckling under the strain of so many injured and hungry refugees, whereas Ritlock Brimstone simply did not believe that Bram was Air's son, as she had never spoken of him. So Bram put out a call to arms, and we, the player character, the Pact Commander, answered. Together we would help Bram retake his home, but many of his people had been taken by the Molten Alliance already. We assured Bram as soon as we had a location for the captives, we would be at his side. However, Bram was not alone in his stalwart resistance to these invaders. A young Char named Rox sought to rebuild her life in the midst of the chaos. You see, Rox was a lone survivor of the Pick warband following a mining accident. When we meet Rox, she is trying to win a place in the Stone warband, Ritlock Brimstone's warband as a matter of fact. And to that end, she must battle the Molten Alliance, the first trial set by Ritlock Brimstone, and we offered our assistance. After successfully defending the North Nolan hatchery, Rox and the player character team up with Bram and a division of Vigil fighters. Together we brought the fight to the Molten Alliance, storming their facilities, freeing captives, and dismantling their operations with each new raid. Bonds forged in battle are not easily broken, and with each having lost so much, Bram and Rox's newfound kinship was a lifeline to both. Meanwhile, conditions for the refugees worsened. Neither the Black Citadel nor Holbrook could cope with the sheer number of displaced and desperate survivors. Many were forced to head south to the port city of Lion's Arch, into the open arms of the consortium. Not wanting to let a good crisis go to waste, the predatory trading company offered the refugees a new start in the South Sun Isles. However, they failed to mention that their first expedition/raid of those isles ended with only 2 crew members surviving, one of whom was a second-born Sylvari Canuck, whose early life we touched on in part 2 of this series. You see, South Sun was and is the breeding ground of the Kaka, and one of these gigantic creatures followed the fleeing Canuck back to Lion's Arch. The Lion's Gate was destroyed by the creature and many lives with it. Canuck was scapegoated by his consortium employers and imprisoned, at least temporarily. You see, Canuck understood that indentured servitude awaited the refugees heading to South Sun, with of course a side order of grave peril served up by the enraged Kaka population. So following his escape, because of course he did, Canuck too returned to those dread isles to free the refugees. His tactics, however, were less than, let's say, sane. One could describe them as wanton wholesale destruction, as he weaponized the resident Kaka population, turning them loose against his former employers. When the dust settled, he had indeed managed to free the refugees with the help of the player character and the Lion Guard officer Ellen Keel. His misguided methods, however, well, they landed him back in a prison cell. Sadly for Canuck, that would not be the end of his troubles or that of Lion's Arch. You see, for Scarlet's plan to work, she needed to destabilize not just one nation, but the entire region. Now the Molten Alliance had achieved that for her in the Shiver Peaks and Ascalon, as the leaders of both nations were hamstrung by the ongoing humanitarian crisis. So Scarlet turned her attention to the free port of Lion's Arch, ruled as she thought by a ragtag council of captains and an aging commodore. If something fatal were to happen to one of the unfortunate captains, she knew just the person to fill that empty council seat. During the Dragon Bash celebration of 1326, the leader of the Aetherblades, Maitrin, assassinated Councillor Theo Ashford and a number of bystanders as well. She'd slipped into the city during the festivities incognito and sabotaged the effigy lighting ceremony. Unfortunately for Scarlet, the remaining councillors were not as cognitively nebulous as she had thought. Captain Magnus placed his former ward, Inspector Ellen Keel, in charge of investigating the incident, and at the behest of Logan Thackeray, an old friend of the late Captain Ashford, Marjory Delaqua and the player character joined the investigation. Detective Marjory Delaqua is of Canthan descent and was raised in Divinity's Reach. She was formerly a member of the Ministry Guard and an inactive member of the Dermot Priory. She is also a talented necromancer. Delaqua left the Ministry Guard after witnessing the murder of a young boy. Her investigation of that tragic and as yet unsolved killing began her life as a detective. So it is fair to describe Marjory as a storied investigator from Divinity's Reach, and together we three soon uncovered Maitrin's treachery. But the Aetherblade captain, even outnumbered and alone, was a formidable opponent. She more than held her ground until a contingent of Aetherblades portaled in and enabled her escape, albeit a short-lived one. Keel was relentless in her pursuit of Trin, discovering an Aetherblade den in Lion's Arch itself. The hideout was a rabbit warren of tunnels leading to the Sea of Sorrows, guarded by the Aetherblades and their Inquest allies. Keel and the player character battled their way to Trin and her first mate, Horik. The battle was chaotic and brutal, and in the end, Horik lay dead on the floor, and an injured Trin reluctantly surrendered. The origins of the Aetherblade Alliance were wrung out of Trin's captive crew, as she remained silent throughout her interrogations. This was the first time the player character heard the name Scarlet, the puppet master behind the Sky Pirates and the Molten Alliance both. If you enjoyed this meander down memory lane, please do like this video and subscribe for the next installation of this lore series. Let me know if you think the devs will bring back Season 1 as replayable content, because I sincerely hope they do. And whilst you're down there furiously typing the whys and why nots of that, please do show some love to Arthur, YU, Cody, Kildare, Cup, Molini, Torito, Star, Dark Griever, and all my wondrous, fantabulous Patreons, without whom I would be unable to dedicate the resources I do to my channel and my content creation. I can never thank you all enough. If you'd like to support the channel, links to my Patreon page below, and if you feel inspired to jump into Guild Wars 2, there are referral links down there as well for both the free-to-play game, the Path of Fire expansion, which includes all the content from the Heart of Thorns expansion as well, and you can pre-order the End of Dragons expansion as well. Just click the links below. Using any of these referrals directly supports my channel, because you, my friend, not a penny more. But sadly, we have come to the end. So until we meet again, please stay safe, stay awesome, and thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.